morning, everyone. Let us start our day with another discussion about Pidgins and Creoles. I would like to start my report with the following questions. What is the relationship between Pidgin, lingua franca, and Creole? How Pidgin became a Creole? Is Pidgin the same as baby talk? Lingua franca, Pidgins, and Creoles are among the many languages of the world, which are assigned to a somewhat marginal position. All of these have existed since time immemorial, but in comparison with many fully fledged languages, we know a little about them. There is a paucity of historical records. This history of serious study of these languages goes back only a few decades. Because of the circumstances of their use, they have often been regarded as being little intrinsic value or interest. Pidgins and Creoles have been viewed as an interesting linguistic phenomena. Accordingly, these languages have been said to lack articles, the copula, and grammatical inflections. Those who speak these languages have often been treated with disdain and even contempt. According to Himes in 1971, Pidgins and Creoles were ignored by linguists and regarded them as marginal languages. Some linguists were advised to avoid studying them in order not to jeopardize their careers. Himes added that Pidgins and Creoles are marginal in their origin and the attitudes of those who speak of the languages from which they derive and in terms of the knowledge about them. Because of their origins, their association with their poorer and darker members of society, and the misleading stereotypes, interest of these languages is out of curiosities. Interest, information, scholarly as well as public, has been prejudicial. These languages have been considered not created adaptations, but degenerations, not systems of their own right, but deviations from other systems. The origins of these languages have been explained not by historical and social forces, but by inherent ignorance, indolence, and inferiority. In recent years, such regards of these languages have been changed, and serious attentions have been given to Pidgins and Creoles. Linguists discovered many interesting characteristics about them, based on the fundamental issues to do with all languages, fully fledged and marginal alike. However, Pidgins and Creoles are invaluable to those who use them. They are essential to everyday living and also are frequently important markers of identity. The study of Pidgins and Creoles has become an important part of linguistics, especially in the field of social linguistics, with its own literature and its own controversies. With Pidgins and Creoles, we can see processes of language, origin, and change going on around us. The speakers of such languages have benefited as more of them have realized that what they speak is not a bad variety of this language. Instead, they considered it as a variety of language with its own legitimacy, meaning it has its own history, structure, array of functions, and the possibility of winning several recognition as a proper language. People who speak different languages and who are forced into contact with each other must find some way of communicating. The language they use is called a lingua franca. UNESCO 1953 defines lingua franca as a language used habitually by people whose mother tongues are different in order to facilitate communication. On the other hand, Samarin in 1968 stated four definitions of lingua franca, such as a trade language. Example of this is the Hansa in West Africa or Swahili in East Africa, a contact language, Greek coin in the ancient world, an international language. This is the English throughout much of our contemporary world, and as an auxiliary language, the Esperanto or Basic English. Lingua francas usually develop as a result of population migration, either forced or voluntary. Mixed language is another form of lingua franca. Baker named one as mischief, the mixture of Cree and French spoken mainly in Canada. It is characterized as a language that mixes Cree verbs and French nouns, but more accurately uses Greek grammar and French vocabulary. Baker and Poppen in 1997 added that another way to form a new language is through mixing two community languages. For example, the Cree and French. Winford in 2003 posited that mischief are examples of newly emerged social groups who wanted a language of their own, who saw themselves distinct from either of the cultural groups from which they derived from. Greek Koine and Vulgar Latin were used as a lingua franca of the Mediterranean, originating from Middle Ages. Arabic, Mandarin, Hindi, and Swahili are among the widespread lingua francas. Arabic was a lingua franca associated with the spread of Islam. English is used in many places and for many purposes as a lingua franca, as in travel and in trade, commerce and international relations. It also serves as the lingua franca in many parts of the world as a native language, a second language, and as a foreign language. Even though Hindi is the official language in India, English is still spoken in all kinds of ways and widely used as a lingua franca. Other lingua francas are Swahili, Chinook jargon. Jargon is one of the original derogatory term for a pidgin, which is virtually extinct today. Plain Sign Language is an interesting lingua franca used by Aboriginal people in North America. This is according to Tyler in 1961. There are different definitions of pidgins. It is known as a language with no native speaker. It is no one's first language, but considered as a contact language. It is the result of a multilingual situation in which those who wish to communicate must find or improvise a simple language system that will enable them to do so. There is an imbalance of power among the language, as the speakers of one language dominate the speakers of the other languages economically and socially. Pidgin is regarded as a reduced variety of a normal language. Holmes 1988 considered Pidgin as reduced language that results from extended contact between groups of people with no language in common. The process of Pidginization. This process requires a situation that involves at least three languages, one of which is clearly dominant over the other. This is according to Winnom in 1971. If there are only two languages involved, there is a struggle for dominance. When three or more languages are involved and one is dominant, the speakers of the two or more that are inferior appear to play a crucial role in the development of a pidgin. They must not only speak to those who are in the dominant position, but they must also speak to each other. Pidgins are not a kind of baby talk because the simplified forms are the best that such people can manage. Some examples of pidgins in the Philippines are the Konyo language. For example, let's make pasok na to our class. Wait lang, I'm making kain pa. I don't like to make lakad in the baha. It's like so ill, diba? In contrast to a pidgin, a Creole is often coined as a pidgin that has become the first language of a new generation of speakers. According to Atchison in 1994, a Creole arose when pidgins became mother tongues. It is therefore considered normal language. Holmes in 1992 posited that Creole is a pidgin which has expanded in structure and vocabulary to express the range of meanings and serve the range of functions required of a first language. Talk Pisin, and some of the West African pidgins such as Nigerian pidgin, English exists as both pidgins and creoles. They have speakers who use them as a second language in an expanded form and also speakers for whom they are first languages. Just like a pidgin, a creole has no simple relationship to the usually standardized language with which it is associated. Speakers of creoles, like speakers of pidgins, may feel that they speak something less than the normal languages because of the way and the others view those languages and when they compare them with languages such as French and English. Many millions of people who speak almost nothing but Creole languages are likely to feel inferiority about their languages. In fact, it was only recently that linguists themselves, those who try to be the most objective and least oriented toward making value judgments on linguistic matters, have found Creoles worthy of serious scholarly attention. Pidginization generally involves some kind of simplification of a language, such as reduction in morphology and syntax. Tolerance of considerable phonological variation. Reduction in the number of functions for which the pidgin is used, and extensive borrowing of words from local mother tongues. Winford in 2003 claims that pidginization is really a complex combination of different processes of change including the reduction and simplification of input materials, internal innovation and regularization of structure with the influence of the first language. Creolization involves expansion of the morphology and syntax, regularization of the phonology, deliberate increase in the number of functions which the language is used, and development of a rational and stable system for increasing vocabulary. Even though the process is different, it is still not always clear whether we are talking about pidgin, an expanded pidgin, or a creole in a certain situation. Hawaiian Pidgin English and Hawaiian Creole English may be used even the same Creolist. This is according to Bickerton in 1977 and 1983 to describe the same variety. Tokpisin is sometimes called a pidgin and sometimes called a Creole. Creolists generally accept that Creole formation was primarily a process of second language acquisition in rather unusual circumstances. It is also considered that children may have played a role in regularizing the developing grammar. This is according to Winford in 2003. Thomas in 2001 posited that pidgins and creoles arise from contact between and among languages. He further stresses how varied these types of contact are so that they may well resist efforts to analyze, explain, or classify the language that emerge. DeCamp 1977 has offered descriptions of one of each of these languages. For example, everyone would agree that the Juba Arabic is spoken in the region of Sudan is a pidgin. It is not a native language of any of its speakers, but functions as an auxiliary interlingua for communication between speakers of the many mutually unintelligible language spoken in that region. It has a small vocabulary, limited to the needs of trade and other interlingual communication. It is a relatively stable language in its own right, with its own structure, and it is a native language and must perform a wide range of communicative and expressive functions. It has an extensive vocabulary and complex grammatical system comparable to that of a so-called normal language. That's end my report. Thank you for listening.